Imagine a world where invisible hands decide who lives and who dies. Welcome to the Shadows of Truth. Today, we uncover the dark legacy of Henry Kissinger, the man who shook hands with Mao while planning population policies in secret rooms. Before we reveal the forbidden truths, leave your like, subscribe to the Shadows of Truth, and turn on notifications. Only then will you remain among those who see the darkness for what it is. In 1974, Kissinger wrote the NSSM 200 report, coldly stating that rapid population growth in poor nations was a threat to U.S. national security. But what happens when a global superpower sees human life as a number on a chessboard? When powerful men meet behind closed doors, what silent weapons do they unleash? Some say pandemics are accidents. Others say they are engineered crises. Crises that destroy small business, eliminate the weak, transfer wealth upwards, and reset the global order. Today, we peel back the rotting curtain hiding their agendas. Because if population is power, then controlling life itself becomes the ultimate weapon. This is the story they never wanted you to hear. Henry Kissinger was born in Germany in 1923. He fled the Nazis and arrived in America as a teenager. By the 1960s, he rose through Harvard's elite circles. He became National Security Advisor under President Nixon in 1969. In 1973, he became U.S. Secretary of State. He shaped America's foreign policy during the Cold War. He negotiated the end of the Vietnam War. He opened diplomatic ties with Communist China. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1973. But behind the scenes, he orchestrated brutal covert operations. From secret bombings in Cambodia to supporting military coups in Latin America. For Kissinger, diplomacy was not about peace. It was about power, control, and global dominance. He believed in realpolitik, the ruthless pursuit of national interests. To him, morality was irrelevant in international relations. He moved pieces on the world chessboard without ever seeing the blood on his hands. In 1971, Henry Kissinger boarded a secret flight to Beijing. The world believed the US and China were enemies. But behind closed doors, Kissinger sat with Premier Zhou Enlai. They spoke of opening trade routes, of sharing intelligence against the Soviet Union, and of integrating China into the global economic system. This secret visit changed the world. By 1972, Nixon himself stepped onto Chinese soil. The handshake with Mao Zedong was broadcast as peace, but it was a calculated move to reshape global power. Because when China joined the world economy, Western companies gained cheap labor. Manufacturing shifted overseas. Entire American industries were gutted. Small towns collapsed, but corporate profits soared. Kissinger's secret diplomacy chained the world together. Not with freedom, but with dependency. A new global order was born, built on silent deals and invisible control. What did Kissinger promise behind those closed doors? In 1974, Henry Kissinger drafted NSSM 200, a secret document known as the Kissinger Report. It coldly declared that rapid population growth in developing nations was a threat to U.S. national security. Because more people meant less U.S. access to resources. Minerals, strategic materials. The report argued that population control would protect American economic interests. It recommended mass sterilizations, widespread birth control programs, and integrating population policies into foreign aid agreements. But behind these technical terms lay a vision of a world engineered from above, where human lives were statistics to be managed, and entire nations reduced to resource colonies. Kissinger framed it as security. But to many, it was social engineering on a global scale. They called it neo-colonialism, control without invasion, a silent war against the poor. Because if you can limit a population, you control its future. And if you control its future, you control the world. In the 1970s, Kissinger opened secret diplomatic channels with China. Behind the official photos, deals were being made. These deals restructured global supply chains. They shifted pharmaceutical and manufacturing production to Asia. It wasn't just about cheap labor. It was about strategic dependency. By the late 1990s, over 80% of active pharmaceutical ingredients used in the US were produced overseas, mostly in China and India. This meant that Western health systems were now dependent on geopolitical rivals for life-saving drugs. A silent vulnerability built over decades of calculated policies. Industrial might transferred abroad. In exchange, the West received cheaper goods, but lost self-sufficiency. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, Hospitals faced shortages of basic antibiotics and protective gear. The world realized its medical supply chain was built like a house of cards. Was this interdependence an accident, or a deliberate strategy to weaken Western resilience? Kissinger believed in realpolitik, using economic dependency as a tool of power. Some say these policies planted the seeds of today's crises. Because when you control medicine, you control health. And when you control health, you control fear, life, and obedience. Were pandemics like COVID-19 merely natural, or engineered outcomes of Kissinger's population and supply chain policies? This is the shadow they never wanted you to see. They call it the Great Reset. Some theorists say pandemics are not just biological events, but engineered crises to restructure the global system. Lockdowns shattered small businesses worldwide. Corporate giants only grew stronger. Billionaires doubled their wealth while millions fell into poverty. Borders closed, freedoms vanished overnight. Emergency laws became permanent policies. They call it health security, but some see a silent coup. Population density shifted as urban exodus accelerated. Remote work reshaped economic power centers. Digital surveillance expanded. Contact tracing apps, facial recognition, biometric passports. A new age of control, normalized by fear. What if pandemics are strategic tools, used to collapse fragile economies, to reset debt systems, and to enforce global dependency on elite-controlled institutions? Henry Kissinger once said, "Who controls food controls the people. Who controls energy controls continents. Who controls money controls the world." But what if controlling public health became the ultimate weapon? A tool to redraw borders without firing a single bullet, to reduce populations deemed unsustainable, to eliminate small competitors, and to forge a centralized planetary regime. These remain theories, but behind every crisis, power flows upwards, and in each shadow hides an architect. Henry Kissinger spent decades shaping the world behind closed doors, but in his public speeches, he revealed glimpses of a global vision. He spoke of a new world order, where nations surrender sovereignty for the promise of collective security. To him, health security was not just about viruses or vaccines. It was a diplomatic weapon to unify countries under centralized authority. In a 2009 interview, he said, "The political world will never be the same after this crisis." He warned that pandemics could trigger geopolitical realignments, that health emergencies would accelerate global governance. Kissinger believed crises should never go to waste. Each catastrophe, an opportunity to forge deeper international control. To him, global problems demanded global solutions. National interests became secondary. Critics call it technocratic tyranny. A world where unelected planners dictate life and death policies. Where biometric surveillance, population management, and economic rationing become normalized. He once stated, "Control oil and you control nations. Control food and you control people." But what happens when you control health? When mass fear becomes the engine of compliance? When invisible elites decide what is essential and what must be sacrificed for the greater good? Some say Kissinger's vision was pragmatic realism. Others call it the blueprint of a planetary prison. Because if one man could influence presidents and prime ministers for decades, what else lies hidden behind his polished speeches? And now, ask yourself, was the world truly unprepared for a pandemic? Or was it prepared by design for a pandemic? Did decades of secret negotiations, policies hidden from public eyes, and silent agreements between elites create a world perfectly structured for mass compliance? Where supply chains collapse on command? Where fear turns free citizens into obedient subjects? Where the same architects who dismantled industrial independence hold the keys to medical salvation? Was it negligence? Or was it a blueprint unfolding? Henry Kissinger once said, "Who controls the food supply controls the people. Who controls the energy can control whole continents. But who controls health controls life itself." In this dark reality, pandemics are not random tragedies. They are engineered opportunities, tools to accelerate reengineering of economies, politics, and human behavior. So tell me, was the world prepared for a pandemic? Or was it prepared for a pandemic? In the shadows of history, diplomacy was never just diplomacy. Secret deals shifted the balance of power. Chains of production and medicine were forged across oceans. And pandemics, whether accidental or engineered, always serve to accelerate their agendas. They reshape economies, redraw borders, and reprogram human behavior. Behind every crisis, there is a hidden architect. Behind every policy, an unseen motive. Behind every pandemic, a question that remains. Is humanity truly in control? Or are we simply pawns moved by hands we never see? Comment your theory below. Subscribe for more hidden truths they never wanted you to know.